trained in military combat. From Sweden, Lars.
Yep, that's me.
Last time on a Tekken Retrospective, we witnessed one of the greatest fighting games of all time enter the fray. Tekken was back. Everybody was enjoying fun and jam-packed tournaments in the competitive scene, and life was good. On the story side of things, well, Jin is evil now. Why not? With the release of Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection worldwide in February of 2006, Tekken was set for years to come. People loved this release especially. It's still hailed as one of the greatest fighting games of all time to this day by a good number of people, and still highlighted as one of the most fun times to be a Tekken fan, whether casual or competitive. But even before that, by E3 2005, Namco was already looking ahead to the future of the series. They were riding the hype train garnered from the success of Tekken 5 and Dark Resurrection, and it was here when we got this teaser. No gameplay, not even an actual 6 on the logo, just Tekken. But people knew what this was. It was a year later in E3 2006 when we got a new look at Tekken 6. And man, this might be one of the most unintentionally hilarious trailers I've ever seen. We've got Lily walking through an abandoned, war-torn town, when all of a sudden Jin just flies through the wall. Like grandfather, like grandson. His opponent is Lily for some reason. Hwoarang then crashes through another wall with his motorcycle and just throws it at Jin. This should be his Tekken 8 rage art. Devil Jin then emerges and shoots a laser through a tower, making it fall and destroying the entire area. What the hell was that? So are Lily and Hwoarang dead? Why the hell was Lily of all people in a fight to the death against Jin? What is with this random ass team up? At least we finally got the 6 next to the title, but still no actual logo reveal. One of the more cool bits of visuals in this trailer is Jin's gloves. As you can see, he's wearing ones that are pretty much identical to his Tekken 3 gloves. This was sadly changed in the official release and switched out for these pointy ones, and we never saw the Tekken 3 gloves ever again. Development on Tekken 6 began alongside Dark Resurrection, but started quite slow. Harada's main focus this time around was that he wanted to appeal to both veterans and newcomers. It was set to be the first Tekken to be developed for the new generation of consoles, the PS3 and the Xbox 360. The arcade version of the game was finished and released far earlier than consoles. It took Namco longer than they ever had before, with the huge cast of characters, with several newcomers, the new graphics and physics systems, and adapting to all the new hardware and technological leaps. The arcade version of Tekken 6 was released in November of 2007 in Japan, and after almost 2 years, in October of 2009, Tekken 6's console version was released in North America. A month later in November, it even got a PSP port, with new and unique menus and character models fit to the PSP's limitations. With all the versions out, let's take a dive into one of the most underrated entries in the series, Tekken 6. Tekken 6 featured a ton of new mechanics, interactions, and characters, expanding on everything Tekken 5 did in ways that are both innovative and controversial. For the core gameplay, 2 new mechanics were introduced: Rage and Bound. Rage triggers when your character is at low health. They get mad, a reddish aura surrounds them in their health bar, and they start to deal more damage. You can see the difference in damage between combos with and without Rage. As for Bound, this is the first big step in Tekken that led us to where we are today with long, never-ending combos and high damage. And while it wasn't as bad as losing half your health from a single punish, you can certainly see how it began. When you're juggling an opponent, there are certain moves you can hit them with in the air that can trigger a Bound. The move will cause them to hit the floor, allowing you more time to extend the combo or hit another attack to increase the damage. This was only the beginning. It wasn't absolutely horrible to deal with back here, but with Tekken Tag 2 and then Tekken 7 and now Tekken 8 with Heat, combos started to become longer and more damaging with each game thanks to this mechanic. Low parries also directly put an opponent into Bound, but this is only on the console version of the game. The stages of Tekken 6 have far more variety, as some stages have increased interactivity, tying into the gameplay itself with combo extensions. These stage gimmicks, or wall breaks and floor breaks, will lead you into new unseen areas in the stage. Stage gimmicks have been part of every Tekken since, with some recent offenders being particularly bad in Tekken 8. When it comes to the roster, pretty much every character that was present in Tekken 5 returns in Tekken 6 with the exception of Jinpachi, who was unplayable in base Tekken 5 either way. So you've got all your main characters in Jin, Kazuya, Heihachi, the return of Devil Jin, Hwoarang, King, Paul, Law, Nina, Xiaoyu, Julia, and every other iconic character from the first 4 Tekkens, as well as the new characters from the previous game: Raven, Asuka, Feng, Lily, and Dragunov. As for the newcomers in Tekken 6, we've got the likes of Bob, a big freestyle karate fighter from the US, Leo Cleason, a Bajiquan fighter from Germany, Miguel Caballero Rojo, an angry, untrained brawler from Spain, Zafina, a strange and mysterious astrologer from Egypt, Elisa Boskonovich, an android girl created by Dr. Boskonovich from Russia, and of course the one and only, the GOAT, the man, the myth, the legend, myself, Lars Alexandersson, a former Tekken Force fighter from Sweden. This was a pretty beefy lineup of playable characters. Each one added some unique spark to Tekken 6, fitting for all sorts of playstyles. Evasive, aggressive, what the fuck is this character doing-issive? When you're playing the arcade or the story mode, there are 2 sub-bosses before the final stage, the first of which is an extra boss known as Nancy MI847J, a gigantic robot that launches itself at you, shoots rockets, machine guns, and a bunch of other stuff. As a kid, this was an unbelievable boss fight for me to see based on sheer scale alone. Next is Aura Farmer Jin, who gets this special little cutscene before the fight, as well as a little taunt animation that puts him into rage for the whole match. And finally, the official last boss of Tekken 6 is Azazel, a huge ancient demon that's been locked away for years, also known as the Rectifier. When it comes to fighting it, it uses a lot of attacks to keep you away, like crystal shards and even a Devil Gene laser, even a stun that's just like Jinpachi's from Tekken 5. Azazel has a constant guard that blocks every attack you throw at it. The only point where you can hit it is either with counter hits when it's mid-animation, or when it's recovering after an attack. You also can't throw the big bastard, but at least you can still do big damage combos. In terms of difficulty, Azazel is incredibly cheap, but in my own opinion, it's still not as bad as Jinpachi. Fighting it is much more manageable for me. The competitive scene for Tekken 6, while not reaching the heights that Dark Resurrection achieved, was still notable with a dedicated following. There were decent amounts of tournaments held where most players enjoyed top tiers like Lars, Bob, Steve, and Brian. And we saw legendary players like JDCR enter the fray. It wasn't until many years later when it would all finally take off, and we would see jam-packed venues hosting Tekken tournaments. When it comes to the story, Tekken 6 is the most different in the series so far. But before I talk about the story itself, I gotta talk about the mode. Oh lord. The one and only.
Great. What?
What the fuck?
Bruh.
Okay, bro.
Oh my god.
God damn it.
Bro, what was that? Well, that was not working. What the hell? Grab some. Oh my god, not again.
I got you.
Did you fucking die?
Tekken 6's scenario campaign is easily one of the strangest and most fascinating experiments Namco has ever attempted with the series. Rather than sticking to the pure one-on-one fighting game formula that made Tekken iconic, Namco decided to go full-on experimental with this entry story mode. They threw a curveball by fusing beat-em-up gameplay and even sprinkling in some RPG mechanics. It was weird, ambitious, and I can't help but appreciate it. Scenario Campaign is the story mode of Tekken 6, and surprisingly, you may even consider it this installment's iteration of Tekken Force. It's a third-person beat-em-up mode, and unlike the modes in the previous games, this one tells the canonical story of Tekken 6, having cinematic cutscenes and everything. The protagonist and primary playable character in Scenario Campaign is Lars, but as you progress through the map and complete each level, each culminating in a boss fight, you gradually unlock new characters. Defeating these bosses doesn't just push the story forward, it also adds that character to your playable roster inside of Scenario Campaign, allowing you to switch things up and tackle future stages with different characters. Even though Lars is the canonical main character of Scenario Campaign, the game still adds a unique touch by changing the dialogue depending on which character you choose to play as in each stage. You also have Elisa as your AI companion who helps you fight the enemies in each level. If she dies, you have to go up to her and revive her. In terms of the overall gameplay, it takes us back to Tekken 4 with full 3D movement of the character and the use of their entire moveset. The issue is, the movement when you're not in combat is incredibly clunky, and in combat the camera is so confusing that you're gonna get so much directional confusion for the first stretch until you get used to it. Once you know your way around its shenanigans though, it's not too bad. Like Tekken Force, enemies drop eggs, chicks, and chickens that you can pick up to replenish your health. They also drop a number of power-ups in the form of drinks. Some of them grant you temporary invincibility, some of them increase damage, some of them make it so your every attack electrocutes the enemy, and so on. You can also pick up a variety of weapons, like metal pipes, miniguns, as well as flamethrowers. And enemies also drop chests that give you customization items. Unlike regular customization items that you can purchase, these have special stat increases, like health, item drop rates, elemental damage, and more. And of course, as you can see from my footage, you can also play Scenario Campaign co-op with a friend. You can both pick any character you please, so here's me with Jin and Rikuya with Hwoarang. The online mode, however, is different and doesn't follow the same levels and enemies. It's far harder and more spammy. There's no story, it's simply for gathering money and just having a quote-unquote fun time with your friend. On the map, there's also something you can click on called Arena Mode. This is where you can select characters you've unlocked through beating their levels, and go through a traditional story mode with normal fights in order to unlock their endings. And that was Scenario Campaign, or, well, the gameplay aspects of it. Now, with all that out of the way, I think it's about time we tackled the story of Tekken 6, which is one a lot of people dislike, but I actually kind of like to some extent. Let's get into it. After Jin defeated Jinpachi Mishima at the end of the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5, he took control of the Mishima Zaibatsu for himself, sitting the throne alone and with a cold expression on his face. This was but a prelude to what would come in the next few months. Since his mother's death and Heihachi's betrayal, which awakened his devil transformation, Jin had been unstable and depressed. There were maybe fleeting moments where he felt some semblance of warmth and happiness. Whether it was with his friends or when he was remembering his mother June, he'd reached a suicidal level of self-loathing. When defeating and killing Jinpachi achieved nothing, he spiraled even further into darkness. In under a year's time with his leadership in the Mishima Zaibatsu, he severed the company's national ties, declared the corporation an independent entity, and officially triggered World War III, launching a full-scale war against the nations of the world. Everyone that knew him was hurt and confused by this, Hwoarang and Xiaoyu not knowing what led him into doing this, and Asuka Kazama, his cousin, being shocked in finding out that her relative was the figure that began a worldwide conflict that's ending so many innocent lives. Kazuya successfully attacked the G Corporation headquarters and brought its leaders to their knees, taking control of the company and now leading them himself in waging war back against the Mishima Zaibatsu. This was now a father and son war, waged from their seats in their corporations. In response to the chaos, Kazuya placed a global bounty on Jin's head, using his role in starting the war as justification. But Jin didn't back down. Instead, he announced the King of Iron Fist Tournament 6, using it as a strategic move to lure Kazuya out and confront him directly. In the midst of all this, there was a young and charismatic soldier in the Tekken Force leading one of its groups as an officer. He had spiky blonde hair and striking blue eyes, and was an incredible fighter who many in the Tekken Force loved and respected. When the war broke out in full force, he reached his breaking point. The destruction, the loss, and the ruthless path carved by the Mishima Zaibatsu under Jin's rule clashed completely with his own ideals. Everything he once believed in had been twisted beyond recognition. Refusing to stand by any longer, he rallied the Tekken Force soldiers who still trusted him and led a bold coup against the Zaibatsu itself, turning his back on the very institution he once served in a desperate attempt to stop the madness from within. This daring coup became the foundation for the rebellion that Lars would later establish and lead, Yggdrasil, an army with the goal to end the war in general. Their battle isn't just against the Zaibatsu, but against the conflict as a whole. At some point during the raid on a Mishima Zaibatsu lab, Lars came across an android resembling a young woman with pink hair, who identified herself as Elisa Boskanovich, an android created by the old doctor and made to resemble his late daughter. However, in the midst of the chaos, a battalion of Jacks, much like before in Honmaru, attacked the building, and in the battle, one of them would detonate and cause an explosion that destroyed the building and killed everyone in it, with the exception of Lars, who barely managed to survive the blast, as well as Elisa. After the explosion, he regained consciousness, but was afflicted with amnesia as a result of the blast. He and Elisa escape the lab and have a moment to sit down and rest. With both of them not knowing who they exactly are or what they're meant to do, they set out together on a journey to discover their origins. They start with a G Corporation facility up ahead on the road they were following, where they come across none other than Brian Fury, who was wreaking havoc in the battlefields in the war. Lars and Elisa defeat him and continue on their path. Meanwhile, since Eddie had failed to win the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5, he had no way of helping his master with his illness, and thus he pleaded with Jin to help. Jin agreed to develop a medical treatment for his master in exchange for Eddie joining the Tekken Force. Eddie agreed, and Jin held up his end of the bargain. He was now one of his officers along with Nina, as the report of the explosion at the lab reached the three of them. Lars and Elisa continued their road, reaching a warehouse where a man by the name of Miguel was waiting. Miguel was a fighter with a deep hatred for Jin. He was always a lone wolf who didn't connect with his family and ran away from home at 15. However, he stayed in contact with his little sister, who he absolutely adored. And on the day she was getting married, Miguel was unwilling to stand with his parents and stayed outside the church. This would save his life, as a Mishima Zaibatsu airstrike engulfed the church and killed everyone. Miguel held his sister and let out a scream. From that day, he swore to kill Jin and get revenge. But now, Lars and Elisa were before him. Miguel believed them to be Tekken Force and attacked. They defeated him and continued, going through an army of Jacks, as well as Lily, whose father's oil field had been taken over by the Mishima Zaibatsu. She decides to help Lars and Elisa and lends them a car as well, urging them to finish Jin.
Well, time to go. Make sure you finish Jin Kazama, or else I'll kill you.
Kazama Jinか。ご期待に添えるよう努力するよ。
Lars somehow remembers how to drive. After another battle, Lars and Elisa were surrounded by a few men in Tekken Force uniforms, when a friendly face emerged. Togo, the second in command in Yggdrasil and Lars' good friend, although he can't remember him. Togo took command for the time being and supported Lars until he could remember who he was and what his purpose was. Before they part ways, he tells Lars to seek out Heihachi Mishima, as Lars had said he needed to meet with him before he lost his memory.
忘れ物だ。これはお前のだ。あの研究所に落ちていた。
He tries to give Lars his insignia back, but Lars can't accept it, feeling as though he's not ready to lead. A mysterious woman, Zafina, is also seen watching Lars and Elisa. The next person on their way is Wang Jinrei, who tells Lars to be careful of the path he's walking, how he's endangering his own life by constantly pursuing the Mishima Zaibatsu. And he even tells him to be careful of Elisa, who Lars is growing closer to, not fully trusting her. Elisa, who was an android, was a major help to Lars thus far. In addition to fighting by his side, she provided intelligence about the areas they were visiting and the people they were fighting. She was helping him recover bits of his memories slowly. Zafina once again appeared, telling Wang she believes Lars may be the key to ending this conflict. Lars and Elisa encounter Leo, a skilled spelunker with a personal vendetta. Leo's mother, Emma, the woman who raised Steve, was killed in a suspicious incident disguised as an accident. Convinced that Kazuya and G Corporation were behind her death, Leo harbors deep hatred for them and is driven by a burning desire for revenge. Leo was glad to help Lars and Elisa attain some data on G Corp. The two continued on their path, meeting with Baekdu-san and Hwoarang. When Hwoarang was taken out by Devil Jin in the last tournament, he trained harder with Baek and regained his confidence. And after Jin started the war, Hwoarang formed an armed civilian force known as the Resistance in order to oppose the Zaibatsu. Baek joined his student in leading it. When they meet Hwoarang, Elisa determines that he carries a strong feeling of loyalty and fidelity to the leader of the Zaibatsu rather than the corporation itself, and that he acted on human emotion alone, something she struggled to understand and also saw in Lars, her companion. Zafina, who is an astrologer born in a family line of spiritual warriors tasked with protecting an imperial tomb, interrupts Jin and Nina as they descend on a temple.
調整者と呼ばれた存在。それを祀った神殿がここだ。名はアザゼル。
How do you know that? Answer me. How is it you know that?
知ってどうする？それで何かが変わるのか。すべてが動き出した。
On the road, Lars learns the whereabouts of Heihachi, who has been living in hiding ever since the explosion at Honmaru. Thought to be dead by the world, Heihachi had been patiently waiting for the perfect moment to make his return and strike. Lars finds himself reflecting on Wang's words about Elisa, still struggling to fully understand her true nature and purpose. Raven, our favorite ninja, is seen tailing Lars and Elisa. Heihachi, protected by a number of former Tekken Force men who still hold loyalty to him, is informed of Lars' arrival. Lars and Elisa fight their way through the temple Heihachi is hiding in, and after a long battle with him, Lars begins to feel dizzy.
"お前のように衰えていくことは避けられないということか。何？お前が北欧で指揮した作戦を覚えているか？まさかお前は？察しがいいな。
Lars' memory had finally returned to him at the sight of his father, Heihachi Mishima. He was an illegitimate child, supposedly one of many throughout the world as Heihachi traveled over the years. As Lars takes aim at the old man, Elisa tries to stop him, urging him not to point a gun towards his own father. And it's here we get one of the stupidest scenes in Tekken history. A scene so dumb, so hilarious, and yet so Tekken that I can't help but love it. Oh man. Lars leaves afterwards. The two continued their journey, meeting up with Detective Lei Wulong and helping him repel a G-Corp attack. Elisa also does some badass action movie shit. It is after this when they meet Li Chaolan. Lars had sought him out, seeking a collaboration with him and his company, Violet Systems. After all, they were adoptive brothers. Yggdrasil gathered all of their members and finally led a large-scale attack with Lars at the front. Operation Gemini, a dual strike on both the Mishima Zaibatsu base as well as a G-Corp base. When it succeeded, Lars and Elisa pushed on to the Millennium Tower, G-Corp's headquarters where Kazuya is believed to be waiting. However, the two are ambushed by Anna and a large force of G-Corp men. Togo and his men hold off the soldiers while Lars and Elisa push on, managing to defeat Anna. Kazuya briefly emerged as well, but Lars and Elisa weren't able to bring him in. Instead, they rushed back to Togo and the rest of Yggdrasil.
よう遅かったなくそしくじったよラースしゃべるな必ず奴らを倒せほんと参ったな
Despite Lars' desperate efforts to save him, Togo succumbed to his injuries shortly after being reached. The loss struck him deeply, leaving him heartbroken but also feeling his resolve to keep fighting. Lars and Elisa pushed on through to the Mishima Zaibatsu Central Tower. They were pursued by Nancy, the giant fuck you robot. But Raven finally showed himself and held it off. When they reached the tower, Elisa was clearly distraught by something, but said it was nothing. As they began to battle Nina and the soldiers, Jin finally revealed himself, but he clearly did not care about this fight.
Mate! アリサ、限定モード解除。システムを再起動しろ。アリサ、どうした？
正門および生体データを照合。風間陣からの指示を確認。システム再起動します。10、9、8、7、6、5、4、3、
そこをどけ。
1。
どうしたんだアリサ？俺がわからないのか？
待機モードです。指示願います。待機モードです。指示願います。
彼女に何をした？まだわからないのか。そいつは俺のために作られた。
In a shocking revelation, Elisa is revealed to have been created with the sole purpose of protecting Jin. Once her safe mode was deactivated, she appeared to completely disregard her time with Lars, showing no sign of their bond. Without hesitation, she turned on him and attacked, as if none of their time together ever mattered. However, I'm sorry to interrupt the serious and sad story going on here, because we've now reached it. Oh god. Fuck. Fuck. No comment. Motherfucker! When Lars defeated Elisa, he tried to reach out to her, but to no avail as she flew off. Raven caught up with Lars, joining him in their final mission. Jin was headed to the desert for his confrontation with Azazel. Lars and Raven made their way down and began to help Zafina repel Jin's men as her village was under attack. The same village that was tasked with protecting Azazel's tomb. When they finally reached the temple, both Jin and Kazuya had already arrived there. Lars has a showdown against his half-brother once again.
まさかと思ったが、貴様、三島の血を 望んだわけじゃないが、今あいつに感謝している。この地を与えてくれたことにな。今になって兄弟が現れること、冗談にもならんわ。
Kazuya retreated, but not before telling Lars of his fate as a Mishima. Lars and Raven entered the tomb, and Azazel finally revealed itself. The demon was an ancient entity from thousands of years past, and is the progenitor of the devil gene. In ancient times, Azazel bestowed the power to certain humans. This was the devil's power, the one Kazuya and Jin are cursed by. The humans eventually overthrew Azazel, and Zafina's ancestors sealed it away, imprisoning its spirit within the temple that was built in its name. A prophecy was passed down among Zafina's clan that stated that Azazel would reawaken and destroy the world when two dark stars clashed in battle. The seal binding Azazel was finally broken when Jin and Kazuya clashed, both carriers of the devil gene and the prophesized dark stars. Azazel began speaking to Jin telepathically, revealing that it could achieve physical form if the world was consumed by enough negative energy. Jin came to believe that destroying Azazel would rid him of the devil gene and save humanity from a path of self-destruction. To achieve this, Jin used the Mishima Zaibatsu to ignite and escalate global conflict, believing that the widespread death and chaos would generate the negative energy needed to destroy Azazel. The countless lives lost became an unintended sacrifice in his desperate quest to rid himself of the devil gene once and for all. In any case, Lars and Raven continued their battle with Azazel. The temple began to collapse as Lars and Raven escaped, and outside the tomb, they finally saw Jin again. Lars had no choice here. He would have to put down Elisa, the android who was no less than a person that stood by Lars' side.
あなたとだけは戦いたくありませんでした。でも私は風間自由を守るために作られた存在。背くことはできなかったのです。短い間でしたが、あなたとの旅は本当に楽しかった。私を人として接してくれた。嬉しかった。
This was it, the final battle. It all came down to this. Jin charged up his devil powers, although he still had trouble fully controlling them by this point. He wasn't adept at it the way Kazuya was. Lars, joined by Raven, clashed with Jin. The battle was long and took its toll on all of the fighters. Jin began to explain to Lars why he did all of this.
俺はやらねばならなかった。デビルの力を持つ者として。だからといって、お前が起こしたことが正当化されるわけじゃない。
Of course, as Jin expected, Azazel emerged, not having been defeated.
俺は全てを終わらせる。
And with that, Jin plummeted to the abyss, but made sure he took down Azazel with him. But did his plan succeed? Lars and Raven drive away from the temple with Elisa's body, as they head towards Violet's systems to meet Lee. Lee and Lars, now knowing their adoptive brothers, became good friends, and Lee promises to fix Elisa up. Lars meets Raven for the last time outside, where Raven gives Lars the insignia that Togo wanted him to have as they part ways. In the post-credits scene, Raven is called by his colleagues at the UN to the desert, where they found something half buried in the sand.
Who found it? A spy drone circling the vicinity. There are no footprints in the area. I think it's safe to say we're the first ones here, sir.
The specimen and pack things up. On the double.
Yes, sir.
Why can't I be wrong just once?
The mark on Jin's arm was still visible, and although he was successful in defeating Azazel, it appeared that sadly, he's not free from the devil's curse. Not yet. And that was the story of Tekken 6, and just like with Tekken 5 last time, we are going so far backwards it's not even funny anymore. Look, there are certain things I like in the story. Hell, most people hate Lars and Elisa. I actually really like them. I like what they bring to the story. I like the connection and the bond that they built throughout their journey. I like the way Elisa says she wishes she had more time in the end. I like Lars' little arc of self-discovery and the fact that he immediately tried to shoot Heihachi's old ass. His leadership, his no bullshit attitude, I liked his friendship with Togo and Raven. There's really a lot I like about our two main characters this time around. The problem is, this is the 6th mainline game in the series, dude. You should be getting ready to close out this chapter of the story by this point, not introducing brand new protagonists and making your old one the main antagonist. Out of nowhere, might I add. And speaking of, Jesus Christ, that heel turn. Jin, brother, where are you? Who the fuck is this guy? Where's the tragic hero with real emotions, who likes his close friends and misses his mother and is drowning in self-loathing and depression because of what his life turned out to be and what he's cursed with? And who's this boring, edgy, and borderline dumb anime villain? Watching how great Jin's character was in Tekken 3 and 4 just makes me sad seeing his dialogue in Tekken 6. He's such a snarky asshole to everyone for no good reason, talking like a cartoonish bad guy and just shrugging everything off. I absolutely despise what they did with him here, and the reasoning for it all is so dumb. So because of this prophecy of two dark stars, Jin and Kazuya clashing coming true, Azazel, the progenitor of the devil gene, breaks free of his seal and starts telepathically telling Jin to fill the world with negative energy? So Jin just decides to start World War III and end the lives of millions because that would give Azazel his physical form back, and he's somehow just convinced that defeating him would end the devil's curse? What?! Brother, are you stupid? Did Jinpachi hit you in the head too hard in the last game? What the fuck is your problem? The hell did Miguel's sister ever do to you? And I guess it's time to approach that subject, and it's gonna become a running theme throughout every video now. Wow, they completely stopped giving a shit about the rest of the roster. Law and Paul are basically reduced to jokes, both stuck in a never-ending loop of trying to prove they're the strongest and trying to win the tournament to win the prize money, failing and remaining poor. Asuka is completely gone by this point thanks to the introduction of Lily. And just... why, God, why? I mean, I don't mind Lily, but involving her with Asuka just completely ensured that she would become a joke, and never be involved with the main eventers where she actually belongs. She's a Kazama! Like June, she's supposed to have devil-suppressing powers, she's related to Jin. She was shocked when her cousin started just killing people out of nowhere. She should be involved in the story and at least try to smack some sense into her relative. But no, instead she's playing high school drama with the rich blonde kid who won't stop stalking her cause Asuka beat her ass in the last game. Here's a little spoiler alert for the next games, she never recovers from this. I could rant forever about what they did with Asuka, but you get the gist of it now. Other characters completely stop having actual roles in the story. King, Yoshi, Hwoarang, Brian, Steve, and whoever else comes to mind. They're just cast out, nobody cares about them anymore. Not even the new characters introduced in this game besides Lars and Elisa do anything. Miguel swears revenge on Jin for being responsible for his sister's death, but he doesn't do anything. Leo, Bob, they do nothing. Zafina is a little bit involved, but still doesn't actually do anything in the end. Elisa was a character I actually really liked, but her reason for existing is unbelievably stupid. She was made to protect Jin. From what? He's one of only 2 freaking devils in the entire world, for God's sakes. He single-handedly plunged the world into a chaotic war. The hell does he need protection from? This was also the first time in the series the King of Iron Fist tournament just doesn't even actually happen? How the hell does it factor into all of this? Jin announced it in order to bring the fight to Kazuya and G Corporation or whatever, but then it's never brought up again. Was it just cancelled or something? Why even have it this time around? Just so you can have a King of Iron Fist tournament? Cause that's what the game and the title originally were about? Yeah, if I keep going, I'm gonna give myself a stroke, so let's call it a day. That was Tekken 6's story. It was mostly bad, but hopefully the next game will be better. Oh my fucking god. Tekken 6, much like every other game before, features a mix of serious and funny endings, though there's definitely more of the latter in this game, and noticeably more since Tekken 4. We got endings like Bob becoming a fat superhero, but then losing weight and feeling bad about it. There's Heihachi up to some mischief as always. This could be seen as a kind of continuation to his Tekken 5 ending, as he's in a spaceship trying to throw Kazuya and Jin into outer space, but Kazuya makes sure Heihachi goes down with them. Law's ending is just iconic, and I'll let it speak for itself.
It's ready! My special recipe pizza!
It's about time.
It looks delicious.
This is good.
Paul's ending, on the other end, has him and Law concocting plans in order to win the tournament and split the prize, as they reach the final round where Law gives us another legendary face. There's also a number of endings that have the same up-close shot of the characters holding Azazel's orb, the best one being Ganryu. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Devil Ganryu is now a thing, and he can't fly cause he's too fat. And that's pretty much it for the endings. I want to quickly talk about the customization as well because, oh my god, this is the best it has ever been. And we've sadly never reached this level again since. There's so much stuff here, it's genuinely incredible. Each character has such unique combinations you could go with that fit perfectly with what they are. There's so many different colors to choose from for each item, so many different parts of their body you could just put stuff on. All the way to the hair customization where you can freely pick out each part of their hair. The base, both sides of the front, and the back, creating all sorts of crazy hair combos. It's honestly amazing. That, coupled with the weapons you can put on, the special hit effects, the aura, and you have the best customization system that we've ever seen in Tekken to this day. Seeing the weapons you could put on be usable in-game, as useless as they actually are, was so freaking cool back in the day. Just like seeing your customized characters in-game. It added a personal, almost goofy layer of fun. And for me, it's a big part of what gives Tekken 6 its charm. And that's really about it. Before I get into the more important subjects, like the soundtrack and my own personal memories with Tekken 6, I want to also quickly talk about the PSP port. Can you imagine how insane this is? The whole game, of course save for scenario campaign, is in here. The entire roster, all the mechanics like Bound, all the new characters, and Azazel. The endings are unlocked via traditional story battles, and they're all there. How the hell did they manage to cram this game into the PSP? I mean, sure, there's no scenario campaign, and the character models and overall textures were lowered to fit the PSP's limitations. But it was still absolutely amazing as a kid seeing the game that I wanted to play but couldn't on the PS2 just casually run on the PSP. The customization is in there, there's a brand new menu, some new soundtracks, and even a new PSP exclusive mode called Gold Rush, where you have to deal as much damage as possible to an opponent to get the most amount of money under 30 seconds. With each hit you get more money, but if you take a hit you lose a lot of it. It's a really fun game mode with a lot of replayability value and a good way to grind out money for your customizations. It was also on the PSP version of Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection, but I kinda forgot to mention it last time. And while we're talking about the PSP port of Tekken 6, the modding community for this version is absolutely incredible. Every once in a while I'll get a video recommended to me of a crazy combo or something like that, and it's all running on Tekken 6 on the PSP. These modders are unbelievably dedicated, modding in all these new animations from the later games in the series, all these new mechanics, the rage arts, it's beautiful. But yeah, that was the PSP port. Now it's time for my favorite subject. Let's talk about that soundtrack, because oh brother is it a beautiful one. You ever buy yourself a soundtrack album and it comes with a free game? Yup, that's Tekken 6 for you. Tekken 6 marks a sort of departure from the classic traditional style of music for Tekken and enters a new generation. There are still a good number of tracks that sound traditional, but in general, this is when we started to get into the techno and dubstep scene. From the 2 great character select themes, the first one for normal battles, and the second one for scenario campaign, to the stage soundtracks, like City After Dark, or how about Electric Fountain? God, it goes so fucking hard. This quickly became one of the most iconic Tekken soundtracks of all time and is still such a well-known banger to this day. But of course, we also can't forget Hacked. Besides these, we have our fair share of classic sounding soundtracks that would have fit into the older games. Tekken 6's soundtrack had it all. It's such a perfect mix of everything that works well in Tekken, and I love it so much. It bumps up my liking for the game by a whole lot alone, and that speaks volumes. But with all that out of the way, we talked about everything there is to be talked about when it comes to Tekken 6. Now I want to tell you all about my own personal childhood experience with it. So as always, sit back, grab yourself a drink, because we're taking a walk back to the days of the PlayStation 2. So, by 2010 or 2011, I had already played every Tekken game that existed up until that point to death. Whether it was the first 3 on Tekken 5's arcade history mode, TAC Tournament, 4, or my favorite, 5. I adored this series, but there was one game that eluded me. My older brother, who was a teenager, had just bought himself a PSP at that point. He was enjoying a variety of games, from Vice City Stories to Patapon to Ghost of Sparta, and I couldn't believe my eyes when he showed me Tekken 6. I'd already known that the game existed, I'd seen screenshots and even some videos. I was excited to play it, but I had to wait until we could upgrade to an Xbox 360. What I didn't know was that it was on the PSP. It amazed me seeing the game run on it, seeing those endings, everything looked so new and crisp. Living in the Middle East, every game we bought was a cheap bootleg copy. There were tons of modded versions of games being sold and packaged as new games to deceive the customer, and me being a kid, I fell for this quite a lot. And so, on a random day, I saw a copy of Tekken 6 sitting there on the shelf of a store that was a bit of a walk away from our house. This was considered a bit of a fancier store to me as a kid. The usual store we'd go to for games was on the other side of the road right next to our house, but they didn't have a lot of unique games. This store though, it was a further walk, and it had things I'd never seen before. One of them, of course, being this alleged copy of Tekken 6 on the PS2. I was super excited, but I had no money on me at the time, so I begged my dad for the next few days until he finally took me back there, and I got the game. When I inserted the disc into the PS2, I was on the edge of my seat. Is this actually gonna be Tekken 6? Am I finally gonna get to play all these new characters, see all these new endings? And unfortunately, as expected, the game that would boot up turned out to be King of Fighters 2006, or Maximum Impact 2. I was incredibly deflated. I just stared at the character select, messed around in the practice mode, but still felt pretty sad that it wasn't Tekken 6. I stayed in practice mode for about an hour, and I remember that day well. My siblings told me to get dressed, and my dad took me, my older brother, and older sister to get us ice cream in a new and at the time pretty fancy spot. We didn't really have that luxury at the time, so it was a once in a long while kind of thing. And the ice cream was enough to get kid me to forget about the disappointment of not playing Tekken 6 on the PS2. Thanks, Dad. Of course, it was a couple of years later when we finally got an Xbox 360 that I got my hands on Tekken 6. Tak 2 was already out by that point, but I enjoyed 6 so much more as a kid. I loved the customization, the music, even scenario campaign. I probably broke a controller trying to beat Nightmare Train. But that was part of the magic as a kid. Seeing a new generation, being amazed by how incredible everything looks and plays. All the new features. I remember still rooting for Jin even though he was the villain in this game. But I guess that was just kid me being an edgelord. When I'd watch Naruto, I'd root for Sasuke. When I'd watch wrestling, I'd root for CM Punk over Cena, even though I still loved Cena. After a while, by 2015 or 2016, when I was a teenager, I'd stopped playing Tekken as a whole. It had been years since I touched Tekken 6 or Tak 2 on that Xbox 360, and it would be many more before I would play Tekken 6 again. But when I did, all the memories came rushing back. This was such a fun era, and although not a lot of people like Tekken 6, I'll always cherish it.